This is The Chris Berry Show. Expert information on elder law, retirement, and estate planning. Information that you can understand. Here's your host, Chris Berry.
And welcome to The Chris Berry Show, where we talk wealth, estate, and tax planning for the second half of life. And this week, just like every week, we start with a positive focus. So something positive that happened within the last week, either personally or professionally. And this is something I learned through a coaching program called Strategic Coach, which is led by Dan Sullivan. It's something that I brought home to my family, where as we're sitting around a dinner table each week, we talk about each day, we talk about something positive that happened during that day. So I have two children, my son Ryan, who's 8, going into 3rd grade now, and my daughter Madison, who's starting kindergarten, and then my wife Rochelle. And so we go around the table, and each one of us just shares something positive that happened, whether it's a recess for the kids, or maybe Ryan had a great day at piano, or some other type of event. So it's a great way to just kind of start conversation and start off on the right foot. Big believers in positive energy and looking at the positive in things. And so with the Chris Berry Show, we like to start each week with a positive focus. And this week I'm going to share just kind of what happened last weekend, where we had Labor Day a little while ago, and I just want to share kind of that exciting Labor Day weekend. So it was great to have a day off in there. And then my kids, for whatever reason, they actually started school before Labor Day, which is kind of crazy. So they went to school Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Then they had Friday off. They had Monday off, and they started again Tuesday. Kind of silly way to do it. I know some schools started after Labor Day, which I think makes some more sense. But my kids started before, and so I actually worked that Friday. But they were able to have a fun day with my wife, who took them to a nature center, and they had a great time that Friday. And then Saturday, we're able to go to the Renaissance Festival, and we go every year. It's kind of fun over in Holly. I kind of grew up big into Dungeons and Dragons and Lord of the Rings and medieval times and King Arthur. I love the idea of the knights in the shining armor and jousting, and always seemed kind of cool. So every year we go to the Renaissance Festival. Kids had a great time. Was able to have some turkey legs and brought some turkey legs back to my parents as well. Took some to go, if you will. So that was good. And then Sunday, it was a busy weekend. We then went to actually out to Lansing, and we went to a hands-on museum they have out there with some of our friends. And then Sunday, it was warm, and we thought it was going to rain, but it actually turned out pretty nice, and we were able to just spend some time on the lake with family, and I was able to do some grilling. So my positive focus was just an amazing family weekend. We got a lot in with the kids, and we were able to kind of share a lot. And that's something that, as a parent, my parents, they kind of took me into different activities. It seemed like we're always driving around to different sports, and it seemed like we couldn't really take vacations because I was always either in soccer or basketball or that type of thing. And so I like to share different experiences with the kids as well. But that last day of Labor Day, just sitting around and enjoying the lake and not going anywhere, that was nice too. And then I have a professional positive focus, and I guess it's a positive focus for this whole month. And this month, we're leading up into the Alzheimer's Walk. So the Walk to End Alzheimer's is going to be September 29th in Brighton. And this month, we've already had some great guests on the show, and that's really my positive focus, is just the great guests that we're able to have on the Chris Berry Show as we talk wealth, estate, and tax planning for the second half of life. And so this month we're really focusing on Alzheimer's and dementia because we have the Walk to End Alzheimer's coming up. So last week we were able to have Maggie Gibbons on the show from the Alzheimer's Association. She was able to talk about the great things the Alzheimer's Association has coming up and where the money goes to for the walk. This week, I'm very excited to have a good friend and colleague of mine, Lauren Kovac. She's really involved with the Alzheimer's Association, both through her personal involvement in dealing with her grandma's issues, her grandma Chupe, who recently passed away. She was one of the main caregivers for her for a number of years. And then she really got involved with advocacy recently. So she's been a big integral part of the Walk to End Alzheimer's, but more recently, the last couple of years, she's gotten involved in advocacy. So in our second segment today, stick with us as we'll get into, I'll have Lauren on the show as she can talk about some of the advocacy points and the exciting things that she's been able to do on the advocacy front. And then next week, I'm very excited to have Dr. Bruno from the Michigan Alzheimer's Disease Center. Very excited to have him on the show, Dr. Bruno Giordani, and he's going to share some of the research that's going on with regards to Alzheimer's, some of the new drugs coming down the pike, and just some of the exciting things that have been happening at the Alzheimer's Association International Conference, which he attended, and he's going to share some of the good news there. So my positive focus has been to really be able to have these amazing guests on the show as we're leading into the Walk to End Alzheimer's. So if you don't know, Alzheimer's is a form of dementia that can really seems to affect those moving into the second half of life, but you can also have early onset Alzheimer's. It's something that's affected my family, affected my client's family, so it's something that we want to help raise funds to stomp out, because it's one of those things that we don't yet have a cure. Currently, there's no cure for Alzheimer's. And so we're big supporters of the Alzheimer's Association. We want to get the word out there. In fact, September 19th, we're going to have an educational workshop at our Brighton office. And we have offices throughout Brighton, Novi, Livonia, as well as Bloomfield Hills. So serving a lot of Southeast Michigan. So we're excited to announce September 19th, we're going to have a workshop, the 10 warning signs of Alzheimer's or dementia. It's going to be at our Brighton office at 6 p.m. To register, you have to register directly at the Alzheimer's Association by calling 800-272-3900. Again, 800-272-3900 to RSVP for that workshop. Space is limited. We only have space for about 20 individuals, and I know we've had some spots filled already, and I know it's coming up, so it is going to be Wednesday, September 19th, 6 p.m. at our Brighton office right on Grand River, right off of the highway. And it's going to be, we're going to talk about the 10 warning signs of Alzheimer's, the keys for early detection. And we're going to have someone from the Alzheimer's Association presenting at that workshop. And then later in the month, September 29th, is the Walk to End Alzheimer's. So last week we had Maggie Gibbons on the show. She talked a lot about what the walk is, why it's so important. We've been involved for the walk for a number of years. Last year, the walk earned over $137,000 to go to the Alzheimer's Association. And that goes to research and support and funding. Last year, as a team, because we put together a team every year, we were able to raise over $11,000 to go to the Walk to End Alzheimer's. And as the committee that we're a part of, like we said, the walk raised over $137,000. Last year, we had 800 walkers for the walk. This year, we hope to have over 1,000 walkers. And what we do every year is we shut down Main Street, and it's a great time to raise awareness, raise funds for the walk. So if you do want to get involved in the fight to end Alzheimer's, please visit our website at thechrisberryshow.com, where you can click through to a link that'll take you to our walk page. And then from there, you can either join our walk, and you can help us walk September 29th, or you can donate to the cause, where every little bit helps, even if it's the amount of a Starbucks. You can donate $5 to the Walk to End Alzheimer's. And all of that money, again, goes to funding, research, and support for those going through the Alzheimer's journey. And the reason why we think it's so important is that this is one of those things that affects us when it comes to planning for the second half of life. And a lot of times, if you are suffering from Alzheimer's or dementia, you're going to be concerned about long-term care costs because you're going to need some assistance. And so what we found is that really there's only 6 ways to pay for long-term care, because when we are diagnosed with Alzheimer's, dementia, we're going to need some more assistance. And so there's different levels of care that we need. And so typically we start out living at home independently. especially if we're diagnosed with Alzheimer's. And again, just because you're diagnosed with Alzheimer's doesn't automatically mean you need assistance with daily living activities or that you need a caregiver. It's just that it's that beginning point of starting to need more and more help. And what we find is that as we need more help, we might not be able to live at home independently. And from there, we might start walking through what we call the elder care journey of needing more and more care as we need more help. And so we start off living at home independently. And then we get to the point where we can't live at home independently anymore, and we might need care. And that care might come from a spouse until that spouse suffers from caregiver burnout, or it could come from family members. Maybe we have a son or daughter who's helping out or putting their life on hold to become a full-time caregiver. And then we might get to the point where we need to bring in some type of commercial home care, where our Alzheimer's has gotten to the point where we need more and more assistance. And so we might need to bring in a commercial home care company. And that could cost, if we're buying a couple hours per day, a couple times per week, that could easily cost us anywhere from $1,000 to $3,000 per month. And then we might transition to needing more care because trying to get 24/7 in-home care, that could easily run $10,000 to $11,000, $12,000, $13,000. So we might transition into independent or assisted living. And so in that independent or assisted living, it's going to be more of a hotel or apartment type environment with some additional services needed, but that's going to typically cost us $2,000 to $5,000 a month. Now, we might need assisted living with memory care, and that might be that same apartment or hotel type environment, but now we need additional services. It might be more of a protective environment, more memory care services available, and that could easily run us anywhere from $5,000 to $8,000 per month. And then as the disease worsens, we might get to the point of needing nursing home care. And a nursing home is going to be more of a hospital type environment. Typically, that's going to run you anywhere from $8,000 to $12,000 a month. And we only have certain ways that we can pay for long-term care. And the current statistic out there that 1 in 2 people are going to need some form of nursing home care. So that's 1 in 2 people. So if you're a married couple, husband and wife, at least one of you is going to set foot in a nursing home. And the average stay in a nursing home is 2.5 years. And the current statistic is that 3 out of 4 people are going to need some form of long-term care, whether that's home care, whether that's assisted living, whether that's nursing home care. And what we found is that everyone wants the least restrictive type of care possible. So if you can be kept at home, that might be the best option. And Lauren's going to talk about how her and her mother wanted to keep her grandmother at home as long as possible. But sometimes medically that's just not an option. And that's where we have to look at some of those outside sources, different ways to pay for long-term care, different ways that we can try to make sure that we have the best quality of life as we go through this elder care journey, or if we are diagnosed with Alzheimer's, to make sure that that person with Alzheimer's has the best quality of life possible. And there was a recent USA Today article that said if you're diagnosed with dementia today, the lifetime cost of that is going to be $780,000. So the question is, how are we going to go about paying for that? And we've talked about that previously on the Chris Berry Show. But one of the things that we offer to our listeners is you can attend one of our free workshops. And we do these workshops about once a week. In fact, had a great workshop last week at our Livonia office. And we do these workshops about once a week at our different offices throughout Southeast Michigan. So we have offices in Brighton, Novi, Livonia, as well as Bloomfield Hills. And typically each week we're going to have at least one workshop. And what we find is these workshops are a great way to learn the basics of planning for the second half of life. And then we spend some time talking about the threats, the things we need to protect ourselves against. And one of those big threats is long-term care costs. And a lot of the families attending the workshop, they're not there attending the workshop for their own needs. They're there attending the workshop because they're caring for a loved one. Maybe a loved one that has Alzheimer's or dementia or has been diagnosed with Parkinson's, because they're starting to experience this long-term care journey or this elder care journey of now needing to put their life on hold to become a full-time caregiver, or looking at assisted living, which might cost $2,000 to $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 a month. And what are the things that we can do to try to protect those resources? And it's not to make sure that the kids or the beneficiaries get some big inheritance. No. The reason we want to try to protect those resources is to protect choice. Because the way the system is set up, especially if you're diagnosed with Alzheimer's or dementia, the more choices a family has in terms of care, the more options they have in terms of care, the better quality of those choices. And that's going to lead to a better quality of life. And that's what we really focus on the Chris Berry Show, where we talk about wealth, estate, and tax planning. It's more than just estate planning. A lot of people think of estate planning or working with an attorney as just planning for what happens if they pass away. Well, we focus on that, but we're more focused on what happens if you don't pass away. You continue to age and you face all the issues that go along with aging. For example, Alzheimer's or dementia. And so that's really our focus. Is we're not so much focused on what happens when you pass away. That part's relatively easy. We make sure we avoid probate and your stuff goes where it's supposed to go. But what our focus is what happens if you don't pass away? How can we make sure that your second half of life is just as good as your first? Or if you are diagnosed with Alzheimer's or dementia or have a loved one that's diagnosed, what can we do to make sure that they have the best quality of life possible? And that's really what it's all about, is making sure that your family has the best quality of life possible. And sometimes the first step is to attend one of those free workshops. So if you do want to attend one of our free clarity building workshops, visit our website at thechrisberryshow.com or give us a call at 810-355-2584. And you can register at any time, but seating is limited. And please stick with us for the next segment, where we're going to have Lauren Kovac talking about her journey as a caregiver helping a loved one with Alzheimer's. And then we're going to get into her work with the Alzheimer's Committee, the Walk to End Alzheimer's, as well as some of the interesting advocacy things that have happened with her within the last couple of years. So join us after the break.
The cost of care for an elderly loved one or a loved one with a chronic illness is shockingly expensive. If you are dealing with the unbelievable cost of care, make sure you get all the benefits you're entitled to. Here's certified elder law attorney Chris Berry from the Elder Care Firm in Brighton.
Most of my clients are really concerned about long-term care costs. They don't know where to turn, and what we can do is put together legal strategies to protect your resources and also bring in additional resources to help pay that cost of care. One of the things that they often say is that I wish I knew about this years prior. And unfortunately, the information's out there, but there's just so few certified elder law attorneys. As the only certified elder law attorney in Livingston County, it's my job to make sure that our seniors, our loved ones, our veterans have the best quality of care possible and the best quality of life possible.
Protect your hard-earned assets from probate, long-term care costs, and the IRS. The Elder Care Firm will get you the governmental benefits you deserve, including veterans benefits and Medicaid. Visit theeldercarefirm.com and schedule a free 15-minute phone consultation. That's theeldercarefirm.com.
And welcome back to the Chris Berry Show. This is your host, Chris Berry, where we talk wealth, estate, and tax planning for the second half of life. And today we have a very special guest, Lauren Kovac. Welcome.
Thank you, Chris. Thanks for having me.
And so we wanted to bring Lauren on because we have the Walk to End Alzheimer's coming up September 29th. Alzheimer's, it's a devastating disease. And last episode, we had Maggie Gibbons from the Alzheimer's Association. And our special guest today, Lauren, she has a very important story. So, Lauren, could you tell us how you got involved in the Alzheimer's Association?
Absolutely. My grandmother was diagnosed probably what would have been about 17 years ago. We didn't know much about the disease, and she was in the CICU for 10 days with all these other conditions, and upon discharge and we think she's got Alzheimer's as well. So we left the hospital going, what is this Alzheimer's? What do we do with this part of it? So we kind of went on about our lives, and it wasn't until about 4 or 5 years later we found the Alzheimer's Association just based off a random Google search. And that's how I originally found the Walk to End Alzheimer's, which used to be called the Memory Walk. Mm-hmm. So my mom and I did that one year, and I got an email the next year saying we're rebranding, we're going to call it the Walk to End Alzheimer's, and we're coming to Brighton. So I said, absolutely, sign me up for that. And so I've been chairing or co-chairing ever since, and getting to know everyone within the association and what their mission is. It's something that's become very near and dear to my heart, and we took care of Grandma for 15 years. We kept her at home, and she passed away June 3rd, 2017. So,
yeah. And so, do you remember the first year you did the walk? What year was that?
actually, I'll never forget it. It was our first ever walk date was 10/10/10.
Oh wow!
Yes,
okay.
it's pretty cool.
That's one that you can remember. So that you've done, this will be your 8th walk.
8th walk. Yep.
Okay. All right. And so I guess what were you thinking when she received that diagnosis of Alzheimer's?
Well, unfortunately, like many other families, we didn't know what to do with that information. We weren't given a lot of information, and we didn't know where to go next. I think she had a follow-up appointment probably 6 months later where, they did some more neurological testing and whatnot. But you really don't know how to plan ahead. You don't know what to expect. I know with every Alzheimer's patient, it's different, but you're really not prepared for what's to come because people are living longer with this disease now. And, there's not a lot of help out there. So it's very hard to plan for when you're given very limited information on it.
Sure, yeah. And obviously it affected your grandma's life, but can you talk about how it affected maybe your life and your mom's life?
Yeah, and that day that she was diagnosed, my mom and I sat and we had a little family meeting together and we said, okay, no matter what, we're going to keep her at home. My grandma lived to take care of us and for her family. And we said, okay, well, whatever happens, whatever comes, we're going to do this, you and I, and we're going to keep her at home. So it was quite a struggle. Mom had to retire a year early, and then I was going to Eastern Michigan, and I withdrew in my 3rd year to move back home and help them out. So it's not that I would change anything, but literally, there comes a point, and it's the progression of the disease where they're going to need 24/7 care. And your world literally revolves around that person. And again, I wouldn't have had it any other way, but you have to sacrifice quite a bit in your own life.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, that role of a caregiver, very difficult shoes to walk in, I can imagine. So I know you've been very involved in the Brighton Walk. Can you talk about your role that you've served in helping with the walk and the committee?
Yeah, so I believe it was year 1 and 2, I chaired it by myself. And so year 1, it actually just popped up in this Facebook memories the other day. It was just about 8 years ago we had our first walk. And I said, we were expecting 150, and we had over 450 people.
Oh, wow.
So Livingston County really needed this walk. And the conversation just keeps getting, louder and louder as the years goes on, and people are talking about it more. So every year we try to reach more and more people, and there's still people I talk with that go, wow, there's a walk, there's a whole association. So to me, it's how can we reach every single family, every single person out there so they know that they're not alone, that there is help, there is a whole association to help them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So along with the walk, I know you're involved with now more than just the walk. You're getting involved in advocacy, correct?
Correct. So every year there's a state advocacy day. We meet in Lansing. We meet with our local reps, and I had attended that for, I don't know, probably 6 or 7 years. And I always knew there was this national Alzheimer's advocacy forum in Washington, D.C., and I never really had the opportunity to go, but always wanted to. And 2 years ago, it kind of presented itself where I could finally go. And once I said, I will never miss this again. It took it to a whole nother level, and that was just incredible. So
yeah. So what were some of the things that you did when you went to D.C.?
So the first year we went to D.C., our big ask was for an Alzheimer's bill called PACHETA, the Palliative Care Health Education Training Act. So basically, a bunch of advocates come from every state. We try to represent every single representative and senator in the country. There's Alzheimer congressional teams, and then someone's an ambassador for each rep and senator. So we all try to push these Alzheimer's bills. One other big ask was for a $425 million increase from NIH for research dollars for Alzheimer's funding. That was our main ask for both this year and last year. This year we're really pushing to pass the BOLD Alzheimer's Act.
Yeah. So I know you've talked a little bit about the point of the advocacy. Can you talk a little bit more on the state level as well as the federal level? Like what is the Alzheimer's Association pushing for?
So at the state level, I know there's and actually I think you're involved with this, if you could help me, because I'm not as familiar. Is it the Michigan Dementia Coalition?
Yep.
That's right.
Yep.
That's right, which I know you're a big part of. So every year that we go, we're always trying to, at more of a state level, and you probably honestly have more education on this than I do. But
Yeah. So one of the things is with the Dementia Coalition is just raising awareness and trying to identify areas of improvement where the state can help with this growing disease. And Dementia Coalition encompasses more than just Alzheimer's, but it's definitely a heavy thread throughout that. So and we've been talking about people trying to get involved in the walks each year. What happens if someone wants to get involved in advocacy as well?
There are so many different aspects that they can get involved in, and it's not that you have to travel to D.C. every year, and even at a local level, like we said, just start maybe attending your state advocacy day every year. I talked about those, we call them ACT, the Alzheimer Congressional Teams. You can always be a part of that, and it can be as simple as sending a tweet, maybe emailing your local representative or your member of Congress, and it doesn't have to take up a ton of your time. It's something you can do from home, and it helps get the point across, because a lot of these congressmen might not have a personal connection to the disease, and that's what we're here for. I'm here to share my story. I'm not here to talk politics. I'm here to simply share my story, my caregiving journey, what I've been through, why help is needed. And a lot of these people, they get thousands and thousands of bills come across their desk every day. So we're here to be persistent, possibly annoying at times, but it works.
Yeah.
I'll share my story as many times as I have to before I can get them to co-sponsor that bill.
Sure, yeah. And so who are some of the people that you've sat down with or you've been able to share your story with?
Yeah, so I'm part of District 8, so my representative is Mike Bishop. Our state senators are Gary Peters and Senator Stabenow. So I've worked very closely with Representative Bishop. It's kind of an exciting year, being an election year. His opponent is Alyssa Slotkin. So when I actually heard she was first running, I immediately emailed her and said, hey, I want to talk to you.
Right.
And we kind of met her early on, and her healthcare staffer met with us, and we shared our Alzheimer's story then too, my mom and I. So it's not just the elected officials, but especially given election year, you want to know the potential people, the people running as well.
Yeah. So is advocacy something that you could get involved with if you hate politics?
Yes, because I hate politics, don't we all? And especially the culture now of, the political culture. It's everyone is very, very vocal about things. And I personally stay out of it. I'm old school. I was raised, don't talk politics and religion.
Right.
So,
yeah.
But that's the thing is it's actually not political. They say that if you combine red and blue, you make purple.
Sure.
So that's why we're here.
I like that.
Yeah. I'm here strictly to talk about Alzheimer's and the Alzheimer's bills and the funding. And it really is just, and a lot of these things, I'm not very knowledgeable about the political system and the way things work and how bills get passed. But I don't need to know all that. I'm really just here to share my personal story.
Sure. Yeah. So I know for a lot of people, and you even mentioned politics is kind of frustrating and they hate politics. Do you feel like your advocacy is having an effect?
So in 2017 at the forum is when, like I said, we were trying to get PCHETA passed. We met with Representative Bishop. We had a wonderful meeting. We did many, many follow-ups for about 7 months. The tweeting, the emails, the district drop-bys, and there was just kind of no response. There was one Sunday I wrote a letter to the editor, and I believe it was Monday. I was at work, and I got a voicemail from one of his staffers in D.C., so I called him back, and the staffer says, yeah, we saw your letter to the editor. We wanted to personally call you to tell you that Representative Bishop is signing on to co-sponsor PCHETA. Wow. And we thought, wow, 7 months later, we kind of thought everything was silent. And so you never know who's listening.
Yeah. So it's a slow process.
It definitely can be. And then this year, before we went to D.C., we had already gotten the phone call before we left that he signed on to co-sponsor BOLD. Yeah. And he now knows my teammate Melissa Vici and I by name. So,
Oh, that's good. That's good. So with this advocacy, does it take up a lot of your time?
not really. Like I said, you kind of do it on your own time. I mean, you're a volunteer, so you can do it from the comfort of your own home if you'd like.
Sure.
You don't have to travel. You don't. If I schedule a congressional district meeting, that's really on my time. But yeah, it's just after work. I'll sit there, and it's so easy just to send a tweet, a simple email, try to schedule a phone call. But yeah, it's all on your time at your convenience.
Yeah. So maybe you could list out some ways that people could get involved, from diving deep into it to maybe, like you said, sending a simple tweet. What should they be tweeting, or what should they be talking about?
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of different ways. Like I said, they could just join. You could join your local congressional team.
Sure.
I know Samantha West from the Alzheimer's Association.
Sure.
She's our communications director, and we're always looking for people who are willing to share their story. Mm-hmm. And so there's ways to get involved with your local chapter, even just sharing your story. And if you don't know exactly where to go or who should I send this to, and that's what the staff is for. They can help.
Sure. Yeah, and so one of the things we'll have in the show notes is links where you can get involved, going to the local Alzheimer's Association. So if you do want more information on that, go to thechrisberryshow.com and click through to the show links where we'll have that information where you can learn more about getting involved at the local level. So with your advocacy, what would you say has been some of the most rewarding moments for you?
That phone call from Bishop Staffer, I thought was pretty cool. I actually sat outside and teared up and called our public policy director because we thought we were just not getting through to him. Mm-hmm. So that was probably one of the most exciting ones.
It's got to be good to have a politician calling you, right?
Yeah. It's rare, but it's nice. And I should mention, because the Alzheimer's Association is a 501(c), mm-hmm. really they have to remain very neutral, very bipartisan. Mm-hmm. So part of getting involved in the advocacy, there's also what we call AIM, the Alzheimer's Impact Movement. Mm-hmm. It is $20 to join, but it's what allows us to kind of fuel this whole advocacy. We call it a sister of the Alzheimer's Association. It's the advocacy arm. And because they are not a 501(c), we are more allowed to get involved in these, kind of more political issues. Sure. Still bipartisan, and for people that join AIM, they even send emails right to your email where you just literally click something, mm-hmm. and it sends it right directly to your representative and senator. So that's a really easy way to help out.
Sure, yeah. And so we'll have information on how to join that program also on our website, The Chris Berry Show. So if you do want to get involved with that, you certainly can. Now, with these politicians that you're reaching out to, how do you establish a connection with them or advocacy when they don't have a personal connection to Alzheimer's?
And that's why I said I will share my story a million times over. Senator Stabenow is a huge supporter of the association, so mm-hmm. she's very easy to deal with. But, for example, I think I emailed her once because on her website she said, I want to hear stories about, caregivers and what they're going through. And I think this was back in 2015 I sent this email. Mm-hmm. And this last year I got a call and she said, hey, I'm introducing an Alzheimer's bill on the floor. Mm-hmm. And can I share your story about Chupe? And I said, absolutely. Mm-hmm. So you never, like I said, you never know what they're reading, what they're seeing. Sure. And, so that if you just keep the conversation going, they will remember. They will have you in the back of their head.
Yeah. Wow. Well, Lauren, thank you so much for sharing your story, sharing how you can get involved in advocacy with the Alzheimer's Association. We want to thank you for coming on the show. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Chris. Thanks for all you do.
Sure. Thank you. And join us after the break as we'll get into some questions and answers. And if you want to learn more about, again, the Alzheimer's Association and the advocacy options, please visit our website, thechrisberryshow.com, where we'll have links linking up the association as well as a couple different ways that you can get involved. So thank you, Lauren, and join us after the break. Take care.
If you or a loved one is facing long-term care costs, make sure you talk with certified elder law attorney Chris Berry from the Elder Care Firm, like Sherry Skelton and her family did from Fenton.
It's really scary when you know that your parent deserves a certain quality of life and you're not able to afford it unless you get these benefits. And that was the place where we were at. we were like, we couldn't take care of her. We all had families of our own. We all worked. And of course, we wanted her in the best possible place that we could afford. And none of that would have been, never would have been able to do that if it wasn't for them. I always recommend Chris. And I always tell people when they have any questions, I just say, you know what, you need to contact this guy because I can't even begin to tell you what he did for my family.
Hello, I'm attorney Chris Berry. The Elder Care Firm is here to help you and your family find solutions. Call us today.
Protect your assets from probate, long-term care costs, the IRS, and get the governmental benefits you deserve. Visit theeldercarefirm.com today or call 810-214-3800.
Welcome back to the Chris Berry Show, where we talk wealth, estate, and tax planning for the second half of life. Hopefully you enjoyed that last segment where we had Lauren Kovac talking about her advocacy, the Walk to End Alzheimer's. Remember, the Walk to End Alzheimer's is going to be September 29th in Brighton. You can learn more or donate to the cause by going to thechrisberryshow.com. Clicking through, there's a very visible link where you can donate to the cause. Now, in this segment, what I'd like to do is get into some of the questions and answers. And a lot of these questions, it seems like, have stemmed from our previous episodes where we've been talking about Alzheimer's, and we continue to do that throughout this month. And remember, if you are going to donate to the Alzheimer's Association, it is a 501c3 charity, so it is a nonprofit. It is a charitable deduction. So keep that in mind if you are interested. Your coffee at Starbucks is not a charitable deduction versus if you do contribute to the Alzheimer's Association directly through our website, it is a charitable deduction. Now, we have a bunch of questions actually, and you can submit questions to the Chris Berry Show at any time by calling us at 810-355-2584, or you can submit via email anytime at Chris at thechrisberryshow.com, or you can do it online at the website by going to thechrisberryshow.com, clicking through where it says Ask Chris. So the first question we have is from Tammy. So Tammy asks, can someone with dementia sign a power of attorney or any other legal documents? And this is a question that we get very often is, okay, my loved one, they've been diagnosed with dementia or Alzheimer's. Can they still legally sign a legal document? And the answer is, it depends. And so it's one of our first things we learned in law school. Whenever someone asks us a question, I always answer with it depends, because it makes us sound smart as attorneys. But it is true. A lot of times there's more facts that we need. So the question from Tammy is, can someone with dementia sign a power of attorney or any other legal document? Well, in Michigan, a lot of this depends on what we call lucid moments or capacity. So capacity is someone's legal capacity to be able to sign a legal document. And for majority of the documents, like a power of attorney, we need to have what we call lucid moments. So someone could have a dementia diagnosis, an Alzheimer's diagnosis, but as long as they're having what's called lucid moments, which can be hard to define, then they can still sign that document. So a typical test that I ask is, do they still recognize you? Okay, if the answer is yes, then chances are they're lucid enough to sign those documents, even if they were to forget in the future. Or kind of a more legal answer would be they need to understand the nature of what they're doing, and they need to understand kind of the bounty, what they have. So if we're able to put together a financial power of attorney document, then we present it to Dad, and we say, Dad, this is going to give your son Joe the ability to make financial decisions for you, pay your bills. Are you comfortable with that? And Dad says yes, then that might be enough to be able to get Dad to sign that document. And now a lot of people ask about, well, what if his signature doesn't look as good as it used to, or if he can't necessarily spell out each letter? Well, then I point them to my signature, which if you look at my signature when I sign a document, there's a C, but then the rest of it's kind of hard to make out. It's a scribble. Basically, I grew up thinking I was going to play in the NBA, so I started practicing my autograph when I was maybe 6, and I geared it towards speed and being illegible. So my signature, there's hardly any letters involved, but it is my mark. So hopefully that was helpful. Hopefully your loved one still has that legal capacity and they have those lucid moments. So to answer your question, yes, even if you do have a dementia or Alzheimer's diagnosis, as long as you're having those lucid moments, then you would be able to get together and sign a power of attorney or any other legal document. And you started with probably the most important legal document when it comes to planning with a loved one who has Alzheimer's, dementia, or is starting to lose some of that capacity, that financial power of attorney document. That financial power of attorney document really is the most important document when it comes to planning for a loved one who might be facing Alzheimer's or dementia. And the reason I say that is the document that's really going to give us the authority to be able to make decisions if that person is unable to make their own decisions. Basically, all of those decisions except for medical decision making. And that's probably the second most important document is the medical power of attorney, or in Michigan we call that the patient advocate designation. But really that financial power of attorney, that's the focal point of a comprehensive estate plan when we're dealing with someone who might be in the decline where they're starting to lose capacity. And the reason for that, that's basically creates the rule book or tells us what we can and cannot do for that individual. And I see all kinds of financial powers of attorney out there. I see a lot of the 3 to 5 page blue back piece of paper, maybe created by a free legal service through work. Unfortunately, those documents are just lacking because it's not specific enough. It doesn't include what we call the expanded powers. So if you do have a loved one that's diagnosed with Alzheimer's or dementia or starting to lose capacity, and they have one of those real simple-looking financial powers of attorney, that's probably not going to be sufficient enough, because if you try to utilize that document for a loved one, you take that to a Bank of America or PNCs of the world, they're going to run it through their legal department, and unless it specifically says what you're trying to do, they're going to be in cover my butt mode and not allow you to do that. For example, let's say you had a loved one who needs home care now, and you want to get them qualified for the veterans benefit. You need to move some money around to get them qualified. Well, if you take that simple financial power of attorney document to that bank, chances are they're not going to allow you to move that money around. They're not going to allow you to set up a veterans asset protection trust, which could get someone qualified for that $1,000 to $2,000 a month benefit. So instead of that 3 to 5 page financial power of attorney, we recommend what's called a financial power of attorney that has what we call expanded powers. So in our office, a financial power of attorney, it's not 3 to 5 pages, but it's typically about 20 pages. And it's not 20 pages because we get paid by the word or we like killing trees. That financial power of attorney document, and I'm talking about just one document. I'm not talking about the whole estate plan. I'm just talking about that single financial power of attorney document. It's about 20 pages. And it's not because we like killing trees or are paid by the word. It's because we found that we need to include all of these special provisions in the document to allow us to set up a veterans asset protection trust or move money around to protect against that nursing home or Medicaid spend down, to be able to pay the bills. So that if you do take that financial power of attorney with those expanded powers into that bank, we're able to specifically point to, well, Article 3 says that we can do this. And speaking of banks, one of my favorite pastimes whenever I walk into a bank is just listen to all of the poor legal and financial advice that's given. It's amazing what some banks say. We're actually talking about this in a recent meeting, a recent team meeting, of some of the bad advice that we've heard from bankers. Because understand, bankers are the latest vice president. They're not an attorney, and they're certainly not a certified elder law attorney. Keep in mind, anyone can give advice, but whether that advice is good or not, that's a completely different discussion. And understand there's different levels of knowledge. So if the person's not even an attorney and they're telling you how to title accounts or what will work for Medicaid or veterans, or, hey, you should name your daughter joint ownership to avoid probate, talk to an attorney first. And above and beyond that, talk to what's called a certified elder law attorney. So any attorney can say that they know estate planning, they know elder law, they know planning for the second half of life. But the CELA designation, the Certified Elder Law Attorney designation, that's really the gold standard when it comes to estate planning, elder law, and planning for the second half of life. Because any attorney can put up a website that say they specialize or they focus in this or that. But really the CELA designation, that's the gold standard when it comes to estate planning, elder law, or planning for the second half of life. where we have to be peer reviewed. From there, we have to sit down and pass a 6-hour exam. And of the attorneys that took the exam, the last statistic I heard is that only 16% of them passed. So it's kind of like martial arts. Like I do this martial art called jiu-jitsu or Brazilian jiu-jitsu, which is basically wrestling around on the ground, trying to arm bar people or take their back and put in a rear naked choke. Sounds pretty violent, but it's called the gentle art. But there's different belts involved. So you start off as a white belt where you hardly know anything. Then you get to a blue belt where you think you know something. You get to a purple belt where now you're able to kind of be more fluent in the art. And then brown belts, you have even more knowledge. But then you realize there's a lot that you don't know, and then black belt. Those are kind of the teachers or the top of the level. Similar with a certified elder law attorney designation. They're thought of as black belts when it comes to planning for the second half of life. And so kind of along the same lines, I'm looking at my calendar next week. I have a meeting, I have to have a phone call with some of my clients because they were talking to their current advisor who said, who wasn't sure about an asset protection trust we were recommending. And I'm going to have to kind of walk through the process and provide an education to that professional advisor just because they don't have this level of knowledge in this area, which I'm happy to do. And what I find a lot of times when we talk to these other advisors that they see the light and they're impressed with the depth of knowledge as well as this new planning strategy where we can protect our clients from long-term care costs, lawsuits, that type of thing. So kind of got me on a rant there, but to answer your question, yes, you can do a financial power of attorney as long as you do have those lucid moments. Make sure you have a well-drafted financial power of attorney, not just one of these 3 to 5 page doohickeys with a blue back piece of paper. And I would recommend that you sit down with someone who's really an expert in planning for the second half of life, and you can look to that CELA designation as an indicator that this person knows what they're talking about. And if you do want more information or meet a certified elder law attorney in the flesh, you can always attend one of our free clarity building workshops that we have once a week at one of our different offices throughout Livonia, Novi, Bloomfield Hills, and Brighton. You can register for those at any time by calling us at 810-355-2584. Or you can email us at askchris@thechrisberryshow.com, and we'll send you a list of our upcoming workshops where you do need to RSVP because seating is limited at these. So now let me get into my second question. I think this is a record. It's 10 minutes in, and I've only gotten to the second question, so I don't think we're going to cover a lot of questions this week. But if you do have questions, we'll try to get those taken care of on air. Again, just email us at askchris@thechrisberryshow.com, and we'll get to your questions. So this next question is, how do I gain guardianship for my mother who has Alzheimer's? And this is from Shelby. So Shelby apparently is taking care of her mother who has Alzheimer's. And the question is, how do I get guardianship for my mother who has Alzheimer's? Now, Shelby, what I'd recommend is we take a step back and I would ask, first, what is your goal? What are you trying to accomplish? So if your goal is to just be able to make financial decisions for your mother, be able to take care of her, be able to pay bills, write checks, that type of thing, then I would suggest that maybe we don't go the guardianship route yet. And the reason for that is guardianship is a court process. It's time-consuming. It can be costly. You're putting the decisions up to a judge or the court. Now, the judge may appoint you guardian, or they could appoint someone else, or even an attorney who has 250 other wards of the state. They could appoint them as the guardian, and that might not be the results you want. So instead, what I would recommend is looking at setting up a well-drafted financial power of attorney document that includes these expanded powers that I talked about in the last answer. Make sure it's a well-drafted financial power of attorney that allows you to do all of the things that you need to do, like pay bills, maybe set up an asset protection trust, maybe move money around to get qualified for the VA benefit, which could be an extra $1,000 to $2,000 a month tax-free. But the key for that is going to be twofold, of whether you can go that route or whether you should go the guardianship route. So the first key would be whether or not your mother has capacity to sign. And that's something that we covered in our last question. We need to look for those lucid moments. But then the second reason why a guardianship may make more sense than going the financial power of attorney route would be with regards to your mother's own decision making. Because understand, a financial power of attorney does not take away your mother's ability to make her own decisions. So she could revoke that financial power of attorney. She could insist writing a check to some charity or maybe a scam artist. Maybe she's the public, because a lot of times what we find with our seniors, and we've talked about this when we get into elder care abuse, especially that financial exploitation, is that once someone falls for one of these scams, they're going to get bombarded by all other kinds of scams. They're going to sign up for a lot of different magazines or kind of different causes, and they can really be taken advantage of. And really, the financial power of attorney is not going to be able to stop that individual from falling for those scams. I've had phone calls where mom signed a lease for a car that she has no business driving because she doesn't even have a license anymore. I've heard of all kinds of things. So there's a lot of bad apples out there looking to prey on unsuspecting seniors. And unfortunately, that financial power of attorney doesn't take away the ability for that person to still make decisions, even if they're poor decisions. And that's where maybe a guardianship route would make more sense, because what the guardianship route is doing is really taking away that person's independence. So it is a nuclear option, we call it, where you're really taking away someone's independent authority to make their own decisions. Versus the financial power of attorney, it's a lot less intrusive, but the downside is they do have the flexibility to make those poor decisions. And if it gets to a point where financially they're harming themselves, or even worse than financially harming themselves, they're really causing harm to themselves, then it might make sense to go the guardianship route. But if possible, I would recommend you explore setting up a financial power of attorney, assuming that mom still has lucid moments and assuming that mom's own decision-making isn't causing her harm. If that's the case, then you do need to go the guardianship route, and you would petition the court to start that process. So hopefully that's helpful. Hopefully you don't have to go the guardianship route, because we do want to keep people out of court. And that's one of the goals of our firm. That's one of the goals of the Chris Berry Show, is provide education to make sure that you have the best quality of life possible, protect you from things like courts and long-term care costs, etc. So hopefully that was helpful. Join us next week on the Chris Berry Show, as we're going to have Dr. Bruno joining us.
Learn more about Chris Berry and the Elder Care Firm by visiting online at MichiganEstatePlanning.com. That's MichiganEstatePlanning.com. You can also call Chris Berry at 888-390-4360. 888-390-4360. This program content reflects the opinions of Chris Berry and his guests, not the Elder Care Firm, Prosperity Capital Advisors, or the C.J. Berry Group, and is subject to change at any time without notice. Content provided herein is for informational purposes only and should not be used or construed as investment or legal advice or a recommendation regarding the purchase or sale of any security or to follow any legal or tax strategy. There's no guarantee that the strategist's statements, opinions, or forecast provided herein will prove to be correct. Past performance is not a guarantee of future results. Indices are not available for direct investment. Any investor who attempts to mimic the performance of an index would incur fees and expenses, which would reduce returns. All investing involves risk, including the potential for loss of principal. There's no guarantee that any investment plan or strategy will be successful. We recommend that you consult with a professional dedicated to your needs. This program is furnished by the Elder Care Firm.
The cost of long-term care can be overwhelming. If you're dealing with long-term care costs, make plans to attend the next free informative workshop from the Elder Care Firm in Brighton. They'll show you how to protect your hard-earned assets and obtain the governmental benefits you deserve, including veterans benefits and Medicaid.
Hello, I'm attorney Chris Berry. As the only certified elder law attorney in Livingston County, I have the knowledge and estate planning strategies to help you. When you call, reserve your seat at our next workshop, or schedule a free 15-minute phone consultation. The Elder Care Firm is here to help you and your family find solutions. Call us today.
Spots are filling up for the next free Elder Care Firm workshop. Reserve your seat today by calling 810-214-3800 or visit theeldercarefirm.com. The Elder Care Firm also invites you to join them at this year's Walk to End Alzheimer's. The walk is on Saturday, October 1st in downtown Brighton. Call 810-214-3800 today.